of all the macronutrients, right, of the three macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, proteins they do produce the most satiety. They give you the highest sense of fullness the fastest. Second would be fat, and then third would be carbohydrates.
Holiday hacks to prevent fat gain. Let's just launch right into it.
Yeah, this is it's a really good topic because now I don't know if you've ever heard the statistic that the average American gains 10 pounds of weight over the holiday season or something like that. I don't know if that's totally true, but I would bet that a good percentage of the amount of weight that people tend to gain throughout the year is probably during the holiday season. So it's a good topic to talk about and discuss, strategies to avoid that. But I also want to start by talking about the real value of holidays, because I think part of the problem, for some people at least, is that they go into the holidays and they either view it as okay, that's it, I'm just going to go off and just eat like crazy and drink as much as I can type of deal. Or maybe the fitness fanatic who fears the holiday. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to bring my Tupperware of food, type of deal. I think it's really important to remember that the holidays are about the people around you, right? Mm-hmm. Being present with the people around you, enjoying the people that you love, connecting with people that you might not have seen all year long, gratitude. And it's important to remember that, because when we go into the holidays with that understanding, it's a lot easier to manage some of the, I don't know, for lack of a better term, maybe unhealthy behaviors that we can engage in on the holidays. Now, when I say unhealthy behaviors, I'm not referring to eating pie or having, a couple glasses of wine or eating, turkey and stuff like that. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to a lot, which, for example, something we've all experienced, right? We were at a holiday party, we eat, we're full, and we keep going. And then we're in pain. And we're like, why did I do that? I really don't feel good. Oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe you have a moment of awareness and you're like, why did I didn't even enjoy the food I ate. I just ate it so quickly. That kind of stuff. So, or just the negative feelings that you may have afterwards, the shame, the using exercise as a punishment afterwards. You'll see this a lot, obviously, in January. So I worked in the gym business for decades. That's where I was born, right? But at least my fitness career was born there. In January, gyms typically, especially big box gyms, will see about a 50% increase in traffic and in revenue. So it's a huge surge of people coming in, and it's probably from, the guilt and the shame and the whatever from the holidays, and then maybe also combine that with it's a new year, new me type of deal. And so, I want to talk about how we can really enjoy the holidays in healthy ways, understand what health really means, because it's much more than just eating the right foods and exercising and, optimizing all these different things. I think those are important things to talk about. And then the strategies that I like to discuss, Max, typically revolve around behaviors and not so much around counting calories and macronutrients and avoid this food and, don't eat that kind of stuff. Because I think that usually, at least in my experience training people, that leads to behaviors and feelings that are not, they're not beneficial in terms of our health, our weight, and that kind of stuff. That tends to be the opposite. So I think we should start with, I think the context of health. What does that mean?
Yeah. What does it mean to you?
Yeah. So, and you're really good at talking about this. That's why I enjoy talking to you so much. There was a study a while, I don't remember where the study was done, but they showed that having poor relationships in your life was as bad for your health as smoking. It was something like 12 cigarettes a day or a pack of cigarettes a day or something like that. Right.
Wow.
Just to kind of show you how detrimental having bad relationships can be to your life. And of course, I'm sure that comes from the stress or the lack of the positive things you get from having good relationships with the people around you. But that kind of highlights what I want to talk about with health, which is that it's this sphere. And yes, perfect diet and calories and macros and the foods have to be well sourced and fuel my body and nourish my body. And yes, I should exercise regularly and, train properly to make my muscles strong and, help my hormones and my metabolism, all that stuff. And yes, I should have good sleep. But it's also friends, family. It's also enjoying the moment. Like, we can show that there's studies that will show that, orthorexics have worse health than a lot of average people. And orthorexic is someone that obsesses over food. So they've done the food part perfectly, but it's created so much of a stress, and it's also damaged so many of the other healthy things or the things that can contribute to your health. It's damaged so many of them that they have, poor outcomes. So in that context and understanding that, when we're going into the holidays, the part of our health that I think we should start with and understand that we're nourishing isn't so much the perfect diet and training and all that stuff, but rather the people around us, being in the moment, enjoying things in the present, palatability, food palatability, right? I've talked about in the past how that can be something that can be negative, or at least something that can cause negative behaviors. But there's also value to palatability. Like if I sit and eat something and really enjoy the experience, right? Especially if I'm sharing it with someone else, I think that's a positive thing. I think that contributes to health. I think there's a net positive there, at least in the context of what we're talking about. That's what we're focusing on, right? So I think that's an important thing to understand when you go into the holidays. It's also important to understand your own tendencies. And where, looking back when you're more, I guess, aware and saying, okay, this is where I tend to hurt myself a little bit, right? This is where I tend to make mistakes, or afterwards what I tend to regret. So, what are some things I can do to help myself in those situations? So I'll give you one example. One example is that when people tend to eat in ways that are not healthy in the entire sense, not just in the what you're eating, but rather how you're treating the food and what you're doing, you can sometimes gauge this by the speed at which people eat, right? You'll notice they're just eating very quickly. And so you can inject barriers between you and that impulse that can help with that. So an example would be, I'm at Christmas dinner. I'm going to enjoy myself, but if I want to have seconds, I'll give myself at least 15 minutes. Right. So I'm done with my plate. Ooh, that looks really good. Let me go grab that. I'll wait 15. I mean, the food's going to still be there. It's not a big deal. I'm supposed to be enjoying, or I want to enjoy the people around me anyway. So I'm going to give myself 15 minutes. Now, what does that 15-minute barrier do? Well, physiologically, signals of satiety and fullness may hit the brain and make you feel like, oh, I actually don't want to eat, or I'm actually full. If I eat any more, I'll hurt. But it's also a period of time that can bring a little bit of awareness, or at least interrupt an impulse, right? So I can, rather than reaching for the second plate, I know I got 15 minutes. And then in that 15-minute period of time, I might say to myself, actually, I think I'm okay. Or I think I'll have a little bit less than I thought, originally that I was going to get. So that's, one example. Another example, this is one that I do a lot, Max, is when I know I'm going to a family party and I know the kind of food that's going to be served. One thing that I have to have special consideration with myself, at least, is my gut health. I have a very sensitive gut, or it can be thrown off, and there's certain foods I need to avoid. And also having well-cooked vegetables always helps my digestion. If I know I'm going somewhere and they're not going to have that, then we will bring a dish that is that. And I'll bring it for everybody. And I'll make a nice dish, right? But it's something that I know I'm going to want to eat as well. And it feels good, right? I'm sharing with the people around me, but it's also helping me with something that I might need help with in these types of situations.
Now, do you mean that well-cooked vegetables do better for your digestion than raw vegetables, or it's the addition of well-cooked vegetables that support your digestion overall?
It's actually both.
Wow.
Raw vegetables can sometimes bother me. Well-cooked vegetables really well. If I eat a large meal, the well-cooked vegetables act, they help things to get moving, I guess. And it really does help my digestion. And I don't get as many of the negative effects that I would get if I didn't have it. It's just something I've learned about my body. And you may think about, somebody might say to themselves like, "Ooh, I'm going to be at this party and not going to be much protein, and I want to make sure I have some proteins with this. Let me make a dish for everybody. It's also nice. It feels good. I'm not bringing something just for myself, which makes it feel kind of weird and isolated. I bring it for everybody, and then I know there's something there that I want to eat.
Unless you're going to a vegan party.
Unless you're going to a vegan party, then I'll hide the steak in my pocket and eat it like that. Yeah. So those are two examples. I think another one, which is really good, is to pay attention to how much you're enjoying the meal while you're eating it, and communicating with the people around you about it. It tends to slow us down as well. It's funny because in other countries, so my family's from Italy, and I've visited family in Italy quite a few times. And I remember the first time, I was aware of this. So I went there as a real small kid, but then right around 12, I noticed something. We would go to a restaurant, and the waiter wouldn't bring us the bill until we asked for it, which I thought was kind of weird. I remember I was sitting there with my parents, and I'm like, why aren't they bringing the bill yet? And my dad's like, well, we got to ask them for it. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, over here, they don't bring you the bill unless you ask for it. So you can sit here and enjoy your meal. I also noticed that the courses would come out way slower. Like they bring one course and then it's like 30 minutes. And then you have another course. I'd see the waiter go outside and smoke a cigarette and hang out with his buddies. And I'm like, why aren't they bringing us the food? And my dad's like, oh, it's, this is how we enjoy, in our culture, if they bring you all the food all at once, it's considered rude. You want to sit down and enjoy your meal. And so you kind of, you see that this enjoyment of the process of the food and the eating and the hanging out with the people around you. So do that at the holidays, like be aware and conscious of that. And it really does reduce the amount of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, damage you may do with food. I don't know if you've ever experimented with this, but I know, like for me, there's certain foods that encourage like this speed eating, impulsive type eating, like potato chips will do that to me. And I've actually done this where I noticed once that I was eating a chip and I was thinking about the one that was in my hand. And
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is weird. I have one in my mouth. Like why don't I just enjoy the flavor of this one in my mouth rather than worrying about the next one? And I did that, actually enjoyed the food even more. And I've now, since, I've trained people for a while, this is something that I've noticed that gets people to eat less and slower. And they find that they just eat more appropriately without really even thinking about eating less. They're just, because they're slowing down and being present with the food, that they end up not eating as much. And I know there's studies that show that when people are not distracted while eating, because I think being distracted, watching TV, being on your phone, that kind of stuff kind of does that, right? Takes you out of that space. That people will eat, I think it's like 10 or 15% more calories just by being distracted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's slowing down while you're eating is so important. I mean, there's at least two mechanisms that I could think of that will really benefit your waistline just by slowing down eating. I mean, one, there was a study out of Japan that showed that slow eating compared to rapid eating, it was a study done in women, led to an increase in the thermal effect of feeding. So there was an increased thermic effect from slow mastication. So just slowing down while you're chewing. And then of course, there's that lag period that you mentioned earlier where, when your stomach is empty, it secretes this hormone ghrelin, right? Which is the hunger hormone. And then when it's stretched, that hormone gets turned off. And so you have this feeling of satiety. Mm-hmm. There are other hormones involved, of course, but there's a bit of a delay in terms of when that turn off happens or when that message is communicated to the brain that that you finally found a meal, that you've got some food in your stomach. And slowing down while eating helps that message to be synced with real time with what it is that you're actually doing, which is eating.
Yes. And this is why all of us have experienced this. You'll eat and then you'll eat a lot. And then afterwards you hurt, and you're like, why did I eat? So obviously I ate more than I needed to. I ate past the point of being satisfied and I ate the point of hurting myself. And that's because you ate fast, and that signal it didn't hit you until you got past the point of actually being satisfied, and then you ate too much. But if you slow down, you'll find that you'll eat less. Another thing that I like to tell people, and this is a general nutrition hack, but it works great on holidays as well. Along the lines of satiety, protein, of all the macronutrients, right, of the three macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, proteins they do produce the most satiety. They give you the highest sense of fullness the fastest. Second would be fat, and then third would be carbohydrates. But proteins are far more effective at this than carbohydrates and fats. And for friends of mine that have gone on things like carnivore diets, they'll tell me, "Oh my gosh, I can't eat like that much." The protein it makes you feel full. So one thing you can do, and again, this is even general nutrition advice for someone, is when you are eating your meal, is to eat the protein first. Now, what's funny is we tend to eat in the reverse. You'll notice that at restaurants they serve bread first, or we'll have the starch come out first. I think that might, without realizing it, people might serve food that way because it helps us eat more. If you think about it, right? I mean, imagine if you're at a restaurant and they served you like steak instead of bread rolls. Right? You would order way less food, right? So eat the protein first, and then second, you can eat the vegetables, and then after that, you can eat the next thing and the next thing, and eat until you are satisfied but not full. And what you tend to find when you eat protein first is you tend to eat less than had you not eaten protein first. Also, from a health perspective, proteins and fat, and proteins typically come with fats. It's pretty rare that you'll go to a party and they'll serve you a pure protein dish. It's always something, an animal source, and typically has fats with it. Those macronutrients, proteins and fats, are essential, whereas carbohydrates are not essential. So from a, eating the essential macronutrients first perspective in terms of health, it also makes sense. But you will eat less. You typically will eat less when you eat the protein before you aim for the other foods, especially the starches and carbohydrates and desserts. That doesn't mean you won't. It just tends to help people eat a little bit less. Another thing that I do, Max, and I've been doing this now, this will be year number 13. And this is kind of a tradition I think some people have, but I think there's a lot of value in it, is I like to have some kind of a, ritualized physical activity with family on the holidays. Now, I think a lot of families do, like they'll play football outside and stuff like that. I love that. What I like to do, and I've done it now, so I think year 12 or 13, is I get my cousins together. There's 9 of us. So we're all men right around the same age. And we'll all do a workout the morning of like Thanksgiving, for example. We did this. And it's really just time to hang out with each other. I mean, we're working out, but it's bonding. It's fun. We enjoy the conversation. That's the important thing, I think. You could do like a family hike, take your aunt or your cousin. And it's funny when now don't present it like a workout, by the way. This will help. If I tell everybody, hey, we're going to go get this hard workout, it's not going to show up. And that's not the goal. I'm not trying to trick them, but I'll say, hey, everybody, you guys want to go on a big walk after dinner, or let's do a hike the morning of as a family. And you just enjoy the activity and hang out together. And it gives you that extra movement, those extra steps, or the extra movement that might help a little bit with at least some of the, maybe some of the negative effects of enjoying the food and drink around you on the holidays.
Yeah. I mean, walking is so valuable, and it's sort of underappreciated because it's like such a mundane act, right? Like you're walking from the time you're 2 years old, but it's such a powerful way of dissipating calories, of normalizing blood sugar, particularly in the postprandial, post-meal state. Mm-hmm. So I love this advice about just getting out and walking.
Yeah. You know what I like about walking as well? It's one of my favorite recommended forms of exercise. Of course, resistance training is the thing I always talk about, but I think I love injecting walking into your day, ritualizing it with meals, doing it with the people around you. But one of the main reasons why I like walking so much is it's the one physical activity that most people can do, right? Most people, if they don't work out, or they don't exercise regularly. Like I'm not going to take my aunt out for a run. I mean, she might try to run, but because she doesn't have the skill of running and she's not proficient at it, the risk of injury is high. And everybody could walk. Most people could walk. And so it's a great way. And also we don't need to change into different clothes, and we don't need equipment for it. It's a great way to have awesome conversation. It's a great way to think. It's such an underrated form of exercise and activity. And so I like family walks on holidays. After the meal, family walk is amazing. I'll get my family together and I'll tell my aunts, hey, listen, I'll help you guys with the dishes, but let's do a walk. Let's all go outside and hang out a little bit and go for a nice walk. And everybody has a great time, and it's a lot of fun. And it gives you that activity, gets you to move a little bit away from sitting there. All right, what do I do now? Let me grab some more pie and another glass of wine or whatever. So we go for we go for that family walk. And like I said, this is year 13 now. I do this workout with my cousins, and it's just an absolute blast. We all look forward to it. We all have kids now, so the wives hang out, and we all train, and they'll bring the kids, and it's a total blast.
Talk to me about exercise. During the holidays, a lot of people's gyms are closed, or they're traveling. They go home where they don't have access to their gyms. How do you maintain the gains during the holidays when you're away from your gym? There was this incredible study, Max, that I want to say I read it 3 months ago or 4 months ago. A friend of mine posted it, and I looked it up, and it was pretty cool. It was one of the few studies that really blew my mind. Kind of makes sense when I think about it, but I wouldn't have guessed the results. What they did is they took two groups of healthy males, and they put them on two different types of workouts. So the workouts themselves were exactly the same, but one group worked out for 3 weeks and then would take the fourth week off, and then would work out for 3 weeks and then take the fourth week off. And they repeated this, I think, for 16 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. The other group worked out every single week. They didn't take a week off. It was just consistent the entire time. At the end of the study, and they tested them throughout the study and then at the end of the study. And here's what they found. Predictably, during those weeks off, you would see a slight decline in strength and performance. And then when they'd get back into it, you'd see it come back up. So that was pretty predictable. But here's what wasn't. At the end of the study, the gains in muscle and strength were pretty much identical. So the group that took a week off after every month would take a week off did just as well in terms of strength, performance, and muscle as the group that stayed extremely consistent. Now, I do want to be very clear. That doesn't mean it's as good as being consistent all the way around. In other words, from a performance standpoint, from a muscle standpoint, they seem to be pretty damn close, and we'll get into why. But there's more than just muscle gain and performance benefits that you get from exercise. Like the daily exercise is good for your mind, good for your psyche. There's other health benefits. Nonetheless, I think what the study highlighted is that taking time off here and there, even in this case, which was every single month, it's probably not going to really hurt your gains that much. And this is probably due to this incredible phenomenon that's been studied several times now, or many times, known as muscle memory. Muscle memory is a very interesting phenomenon. Most people have experienced it. They just didn't know what they experienced. So if you've ever had a broken bone or an injury, let's say you wore a cast and you took the cast off and the muscle's so atrophied. I mean, when I was 13, I dislocated my knee. I had to wear this knee brace, and I think I wore it for like 2 months. And I remember when I took it off, like my leg was so atrophied, like it was so skinny. It was really strange to look at. And then when I rehabbed it and strengthened it, the muscle back so quickly. Within a couple months, it was back to its original size. That's muscle memory. So what does that mean for somebody when they work out? Let's say it takes you a year to build 12 pounds of muscle and gain the benefits of that 12 pounds of muscle, like the faster metabolism and the strength and all that stuff. And then let's say for whatever reason, you stop working out for 3 months and you get really sedentary and you lose all of it, all 13 pounds of muscle gone. And then you decide, I'm going to get back into it. You'll regain that 13 pounds of muscle in a fraction of the time. I mean, you'll probably gain it back within 2 months. It took you a year to gain it the first time, but once you gained it and then lost it, it comes back much faster. They think this has to do with
satellite cell proliferation and muscle and how the body prepares itself for potential future adaptations. In other words, if your body thinks it needs muscle and strength, because remember, your body doesn't know you're working out. It thinks you're stressing yourself, and we need muscle, we need strength. It predicts that it'll probably need it again in the future, so it sets itself up to adapt much faster. There's another phenomenon that they've identified with fat gain with this as well, which is really interesting. This is a bit on the negative side, but when people diet and then binge, so they've seen this in physique competitors, bikini competitors, because they go through these extreme diets, right? They'll cut their calories super low for 16 weeks, go into a show, get on stage, compete, and then afterwards just, oh, I'm done. And then they go way off and you see this crazy weight gain. There's evidence that the body will actually add new fat cells when that process happens, because your body's trying to improve its ability to capture energy. It's trying to become more efficient at capturing energy, because you starved, you binged, you starved, you binged. Okay, we got to get much better at capturing the energy when we get it to deal with the next, starving period. But anyway, that was off on another tangent. But yeah, muscle memory. So if you take time off, you're fine. You'll gain it back so fast, so fast, it'll come right back. Doesn't even matter. And if it's like a week, like the study showed, it doesn't make that big of a difference at all.
And what if you do still, because you mentioned the mental health benefits of exercise are profound. So what if you don't have access to a gym, but you still want to exercise a little bit? Push-ups, air squats, things like that. Are those generally effective if you're used to a more intense workout regimen?
Yeah. Well, you're not going to lose any gains even if you took a little bit of time off. But if you are doing bodyweight exercises or exercise without equipment, this is a great time to introduce novelty to your body. And the body responds very well to novelty. So if you follow a particular routine and you find that you've hit a plateau, oftentimes all that is needed is a change in the exercise or a change in the tempo or the rep range or the rest periods. If I'm training someone who does traditional resistance training, rests for 2 minutes in between each set of exercise, always trains in the 8 to 12 repetition range, and they say, yeah, my body's really not progressing anymore. An easy way to get the body to move forward again would be like, okay, we're going to have you rest for 60 seconds and I'm going to have you train in the 15 to 20 rep range. Or I'm going to have you rest 3 minutes in between sets and we're going to go into the 5 rep range, or maybe even just change the exercise or all of the above. And you'll start to see the body change again. So the body is really sensitive to novelty. So often this, and it's funny, this was during the lockdowns when all the gyms were closed. This was the advice that I was giving to a lot of people because they were so like, oh my God, I don't have a gym. And I said, okay, let's introduce some novelty. So you're really strong, obviously. So air squats are going to be super easy for you. Let's go down. Let's do them really slow. Like let's take a minute to do like one repetition, or let's try a pistol squat with one leg. Or let's focus on mobility, or let's do isometric tension, right? So isometrics are phenomenal. In fact, if you wanted to set up like an advanced isometric station at home, you could literally put 2 bolts in the floor, attach a couple chains in a bar, and you could get underneath it and squat against an immovable object or press against an immovable object and just create tension. You can also do this intrinsically, which is less advanced, less intense, where I'm just tensing a muscle as hard as I can and doing an isometric contraction. We can also do holds where I'll go halfway down in a squat and tense everything and hold that for 30 seconds or whatever. But anyway, I gave this advice to a lot of people. And I said, this novelty effect, I bet you when you go back to the gym, you'll probably break past some of your old plateaus. And I did. I got a lot of DMs of people saying that they focused on mobility and tension and isometrics, went back to the gym. They weren't as strong as they were when they left because obviously there's a skill component to strength. So they hadn't practiced certain exercises in a while. But then within a month, they were like, dude, I added 10 pounds to my overhead press, or my squats used to bother my hip and now they don't anymore. So it's a great opportunity to introduce novelty. I like mobility work personally when I don't have gym equipment. I think it's a great opportunity to work through new ranges of motion and connect to new ranges of motion. So I can then, when I go back to the gym, I have fuller ranges of motion and better connection to the exercises that I do so often.
Love that. Yeah, because I think like people might be inclined to think that somebody like you, for example, I mean, not everybody looks like you. I mean, by the way, your biceps, I feel like have gotten bigger since the last time I saw you.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Either that or it's the camera tricks. We're editing the videos now.
Are you using fisheye lenses so that on the outside you look? But yeah, it's like, you're probably used to a certain level of intensity in the gym. How could you possibly replicate that with no gym?
Yeah, and it's not that you're trying to match what you're doing in the gym. It's that you're trying to introduce something new to your body. I mean, that's the opportunity, at least. Right now, I can try to copy my gym workout at home. And there's some value in that, I guess. I mean, you're still exercising, you're still moving. Maybe you're training in the same ranges of motion, and planes that you're used to in the gym. Maybe some value, but I think there's more value in saying, okay, I never train isometrics, or I never work on really increasing my range of motion, or I never work on mobility, or, maybe I'd never do high intensity intervals or sprints or plyometrics. That's another one, right? So now let me introduce this novel way of training. I don't need to match my old intensity. I mean, look, we've all experienced this. Have you ever done something that you're not used to and it wasn't really that hard, but the next day you're sore? You're like, wait a minute, I work out my shoulders all the time, and washing windows, the next day I got my or something like that, right? It's because it's novel. It's causing more stress and damage to the body, because the body adapts in relatively specific ways. Like if I'm really good at the bench press, a lot of the strength that I get in the bench press is going to be to the bench press. I'll have some strength that carries over to other exercises, but most of it is going to be to the bench press. I'm definitely, though, not going to be as good at push-ups as the guy that always does push-ups, and vice versa, right? Even though there's similar exercises. So that opportunity to introduce novel exercises or things that you never normally focus on, I think is phenomenal. I have friends that focused more on mindfulness and meditation because they never did before. I'm like, well, this is a good opportunity. And they very positive feedback afterwards. Like, I got a lot out of that, and I'm glad that happened.
Love that. Speaking of the more mindset side of things, I think like a lot of people, especially people that are interested, like we are in health and nutrition and wellness, we work really hard to curate our home environments, right? Like our fridges are stocked with, like in my case, it's only wild salmon and grass-fed beef and grass-fed dairy products, and organic apples and things like that, to the point that, I mean, I'm not orthorexic, but like, I'm sure that if I were to spend a week in, out of my element in a home, a family home, even where it wasn't so well curated, it would cause me some degree of stress,
Sure.
Especially if I had a family, which I don't, but that lived in an area that wasn't in close proximity to a Whole Foods.
Yeah. That's a great scenario to bring up. Again, I think so here's the interesting aspect of this particular phenomenon, right? If I go into it fearing the environment, oh no, I'm going to eat all this terrible food. Like, this is not going to be good, right? You're setting yourself up for this situation where either you're going to become this oppressive dictator over yourself. You can't. And then the other side of you is this kid that's like, okay. And then someone offers you a cookie. And then how do you respond? You don't say, I don't want that cookie. You say, I can't have that cookie. And then eventually what that leads to is rebellion, right? This is why we when we go off a diet, right? Quote unquote, a diet, we don't just kind of go off of it. We go way off.
Yeah.
Like, why do we do that? We rebelled, right? We rebelled from ourselves. So you're kind of setting yourself up in a way that's probably not going to work very well. So instead, enjoy yourself. And when I say enjoy, I mean it in a real sense, not in the I'm gonna hurt myself, enjoy myself. It's not really enjoying yourself. That's kind of punishing yourself, but enjoy yourself. And then remember why you're there, right? I'm here to be with family. I'm here to connect with these people, or be away from my normal environment, get away from my stresses, or, my typical rigmarole or whatever, right? Remember that. And I think I know this through experience, your behaviors are going to be far more healthy. You're less likely to eat to the point of binging. You're less likely to experience that post-holiday shame that then we use to punish ourselves. And then it's a way to rebel again. And this way you start to see the cycle, that starts to build. Again, talking about January in the gyms, like we would get so many people and they'd all be so motivated and they'd all want to work out and they'd all buy memberships and they'd all do this, like, I'm ready to go. And it would be so packed in the gym at, prime time. It was like a nightclub. I'd have to walk through sideways if it was 5 or 6 p.m. in certain parts of the gym. But by the time March and April roll around, and you'd see this kind of decline, this trend that would start to steeply increase. By April, it's back to normal and people would stop coming. And again, it's because they're going into it with that attitude that I think we need to address, which is like, oh my God, I'm scared. I'm gonna eat all this food. I'm off my routine and I'm stressed out, and they're not gonna, no, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna just enjoy myself. I'm gonna relax, enjoy myself, enjoy the people around me, and remember that I'm feeding a part of my health that might include drinking a glass of wine, hanging out with my aunt or my cousin, till 2:00 in the morning, enjoying, my grandma's homemade lasagna. I never eat that, but once a year she makes it. Like, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to sit here but really enjoy it, right? Like, taste every bite and talk to her about it. And I think when you go in with that attitude, it's such a different experience. And what happens, you actually create, you create a more natural, I'd say, balance. Generally speaking, I talk about this a lot on our podcast. We'll talk about like intuitive eating, or what that means, or how you can eat healthy without counting macros and calories, which I think can actually oftentimes does lead to more stress around food, which then leads to, people rebounding. I talk a lot about the natural balance in the sense that, for example, if I'm trying to take care of myself, which that's what eating right and exercising is, if you really think about it, right? It's I'm taking care of me, right? I'm nourishing me. I'm someone that deserves to be taken care of. I can also, by the way, you can be very honest with yourself, and you can say, I have not been kind to myself, and I'm somebody that deserves to be taken care of. So that's why I'm doing this. And so what does that mean? Most of the time, it means you probably eat, healthy. You're probably not overeating. You're eating whole natural foods. You're eating, the right amount of proteins and fats and maybe carbohydrates, and you're exercising consistently, because that's what that means most of the time. But sometimes, you know what it means? I'm hanging out with my aunt, eating my grandma's homemade lasagna, drinking a glass of wine till 2:00 in the morning. But it's this natural balance. It also leads to this, like I said earlier, do you want the cookie? No, I can't. Like, if I'm taking care of me and I know what that means in the moment, and someone offers me a cookie or a slice of pie, I may say, I don't want it. Now, that doesn't mean I know I won't enjoy eating it. Okay. I think people confuse the two, because they'll say, no, I do want it. No. I know I'll enjoy eating that slice of pie, but I also know right now that's not really taking care of me. So I actually don't want it. That doesn't mean I know I won't enjoy it, but it means I don't want it. I'm sure, hard drugs are probably enjoyable too, right? But right, I don't want that, right? I don't want it. But sometimes it means, yes, I'd like to have a slice of that pie. I think I'm going to take care of myself in that way right now. And so it's just, you get more balance that way. And I think, again, with the holidays, I think if we go into it with that mentality, understanding, compassion for ourselves, we're taking care of ourselves, connecting with other people, you have your odds of having a healthy balance are much higher. If you go into it with the fear, or I have to eat perfect, what am I going to do? Or, oh my gosh, here comes the holidays, I'm going to go, this is my opportunity to go crazy, where you, again, also punishing yourself, masking it as, enjoying yourself, but in reality, you're actually punishing yourself. If you go into it with those attitudes, it results in way less balance. Binging, restricting, shame. Oh, got to work out, hurt myself because I deserve it. I used to get people who come into the gym all the time and, oh man, I ate so bad yesterday. I'm going to just beat myself up on the treadmill. I'm going to burn that burrito off, Like, man, you are going to hate exercise if that's how you view it, like self-flagellation, right? Like this is a punishment. Of course, you're going to stop eventually. Who the hell wants to punish themselves all the time? But everybody wants to take care of themselves, right? Everybody likes that. So go into it with that mentality.
So true. And I think it's interesting, like food, we need to remember that food plays different roles for different people, right? Like for you and me, food, we love the science of food, right? We love cooking. We love knowing what food is doing to our biology. We love using food as a performance enhancing tool. Like food plays all these roles, has all these, there's all these it has all this utility for us, right? But also, and this isn't to be underappreciated, that food is an expression of love. It's a way that we bond. It's a way that we communicate with one another. I love cooking for my brothers and my friends that I have over. Your aunt her favorite thing in the world might be cooking her whatever kind of pie, and seeing the smiles on the faces of her family as they taste it. And that is not to be underappreciated. Or
no, it's food is culture. Food is how we connect. Food. I mean, look at it this way, Max. There's foods for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's foods for weddings. There's foods for, when do you crave popcorn? The movies, right? There's movie food, right? There's acceptable foods that you eat on the couch while you're watching TV and foods that you may eat in a meeting, or it's very interesting, right? But it's also, what does this tell us? This tells us that it's very complex. And if we just view food as, this is how I lose weight, this is how I gain weight, this is how I'm going to get myself in shape, you're ignoring this huge side of food, which if you ignore it, you're going to fail. That's why everybody fails, because they completely ignore it. There's no balance. It's either one or the other. By the way, we don't just enjoy food for its objective taste or palatability. That's one thing that we enjoy food for. But there are strong associations that you can make with food that will then make food enjoyable for you, or not enjoyable, but you can do it to make foods enjoyable. For example, like, this is a terrible example, but when I was a kid, I don't know why my grandmother, she didn't buy a lot of crackers and stuff like that. She would always cook for us. But there was one cracker that she always got. It was called, I don't know if you've ever seen this, called chicken in a biscuit. Okay.
I've heard of them. Yeah, I've seen them.
It's literally a cracker that it's like flavored like chicken soup. It's the strangest thing ever, right? But because I ate it at my grandma's, if I was sick home from school, she'd give it to me. I have this incredible association with it. So if I ate chicken in a biscuit crackers now, I can objectively tell you this is not the best tasting snack, but I would enjoy eating it, right? Like, oh, this is great. It works in the reverse too. They've done studies where they've served people food in unappealing, methods. For example, they'll give people like a mini clean toilet and they'll serve them ice cream in it. And then they'll serve them ice cream in a nice bowl. And then they'll see how much they ate out of the toilet versus the bowl. And of course, people eat less out of the bowl. Marketers are very, very effective at this, right? You look at a beer commercial, it's always like, beach and girls and, oh, this is, what you want, or here's the party, or like, you'll never see a food company associate their food with like indigestion, like, hey, eat our potato chips and you'll get bloated. Nobody would want to buy it, right? Now, why is this important to understand? You could do this with yourself. How do you do this with yourself? Just become aware of all of the values that food provides for you. Okay, so what did I say earlier in the podcast? Well-cooked vegetables helps my digestion. Okay, I've identified that. So the value of that is, man, it really helps my digestion. Do I really enjoy the flavor of well-cooked vegetables? I mean, compared to other foods, not really. Most of the time when I'm cooking for myself, Max, it's literally like heavily steamed asparagus or boiled broccoli. It's not the tastiest food in the world, but I crave it. I crave it because I know what it does for my digestion. So I've associated it with that. And all that requires is a little bit of awareness. So you eat food, and by the way, don't just connect it to how you look. That's one thing, of course, but I think it's more important to connect it to how you feel. Wow, I feel my digestion's good. I have more energy. My skin is, when I eat these particular foods, my skin just looks phenomenal. Or I have more energy in my meetings at work. And it's just being aware, that's all. And then what'll happen is you'll start to crave those foods more because you've associated them with those good things. It works in the reverse as well. If you start to identify that, man, that morning bagel that I eat every morning gives me a little bit of heartburn. Like I kind of take for granted, I pop a couple Tums every day mid-morning. I'm starting to realize it's that morning bagel. Or, man, I feel really sluggish after I ate this particular food. Or I notice I get irritable or I don't sleep well. Just pay attention to all those things. And then what you'll find is naturally, you don't have to, honest to God, this will happen for most people naturally, is you'll slowly be like, I don't want that. I don't, that doesn't make me feel I know it tastes good, but it doesn't really make me feel good. Or, yeah, I'd like to have some of that because it just makes me feel so good. I have so much energy when I eat that or whatever. So that's something that I think is an effective way to help yourself achieve better balance, I think, with food. Because when you're aware of all of the values that food provides us, not just its palatability, but everything else, I think you start to make choices, especially from the context of I'm taking care of myself, you start to make better choices.
Couldn't agree more. What about from the standpoint of other family members, right? Like we all dread, going home, maybe not all of us, but some of us, we go home, we're surrounded by family members that we don't often interact with, topics of conversation that come up that are potentially polarizing, right? Politics, what have you.
Yeah. Why don't you have a girlfriend yet? Yeah.
Why don't you have a girlfriend
Why
yet?
aren't you married yet? Yeah.
Yeah. So those kinds of annoying conversations. What do we? So I'm sure some people go home and their family members don't understand that they are on a path to health and wellness. That they have, the values that are perhaps different than theirs. That they value things like nutrition and fitness. Anything to ease the friction there? Because I'm sure that that's a point of contention in some families. Dude,
like I said, my family's Italian, and food is like, we do everything with food, and we do a lot of it. And I have a lot of family in the San Jose area where I live. And so very easily, I'm talking about holidays that are once a year. I mean, very easily, I'm going to see 30 to 40 family members once a week, right? So it can become like Christmas every weekend. And for me personally, I enjoy the holidays, but every weekend is just too much for me to indulge in that way, at least with food and stuff like that. So in my family, this was totally an issue for a little while. And what I learned was, if I said I can't eat that, or no, I can't, it was like, forget it. They're going to sit there. They're going to convince me, it's going to be this debate. And why can't you? And, oh, mom, come on, I'm trying to, be in shape. And, oh, come on, you can eat. It's not a big deal. No, you don't understand. I can't because I got to, I changed it to, I don't want that. Oh, no, thank you. I don't want any. So much more effective. Now you still might get the person that's like, oh, come on, try it. No, honestly, I really don't want any. And then people tend to leave you alone. They really do. They tend to leave you alone when you say it that way. But I can't, you're screwed. You say that. And if your grandma's like mine, like.
That's such a simple but powerful hack right there. Instead of saying, I can't, I don't want any.
Yes. People don't want to, they don't like to pressure people who say they don't want something because they're like, well, okay, well, why? But if you say I can't, they almost feel like they're doing you, a favor. Oh, wow. Come on, Max, you can do it. You're here. It's not a big deal. It's one meal, and like, oh, we're going to have this whole discussion and I'm going to have to explain myself and then I'm going to feel guilty and whatever. Yeah, no, I don't want any. And it's so much more effective. I remember when I first started doing that, I was like, oh shit, nobody's hammering me to try to get me to eat more food because I said, I don't want any more.
And that probably also applies to like alcohol too. I mean, that's a big thing, like the pressure to drink.
Totally. And then, as far as activity is concerned, I think your best bet is definitely doing it first thing in the morning, because especially if you're out of town or you're with friends and family, lots of things. If you want to be consistent, at least if this is important to you, doing it later in the day, it's really easy to have things get in the way or interrupt, or, that time now starts to move further and further down the day. And then you're like, forget it. Just wake up. And the first thing you do is you do your workout. It also sets the tone. There's a lot of studies that show that when people exercise and with no intention of changing their nutrition, they tend to make better food choices naturally. And it makes sense, right? You're working out, you're more conscious of your health. So I'm going to start eating a little bit better. If you work out in the morning, in my experience, now it can go in the other direction too, but more often than not, it goes in this direction where, because you worked out in the morning, you got that mindset, health. I feel good, I feel fit, and then you go into the rest of the day, and you have that mindset going into it. You might not have the best workouts in the morning, but that's not the point there. I work out at 6 a.m. every day now, and it sucks. I hate if I compare my 6 a.m. workouts to like a noon workout, performance wise, it sucks. Way stronger in the afternoon, way more energy, better workouts. But when I work out at 6 a.m., I'm very consistent. I have 3 kids, so that all kinds of stuff can happen during the day. Plus, my workouts contribute to a positive attitude. I'm sharper minded. I come to Mind Pump. I do my podcast. I feel great mentally and emotionally. So the value it outweighs the fact that maybe I can't lift as much, or I'm not going to perform, as effectively or as with as much stamina and endurance as I would in the afternoon.
But don't you? I mean, you work for Mind Pump, but it's like your company. Don't you have a bit more lifestyle flexibility than that? Like, why do you have to work out at 6 a.m. if you don't want?
I don't have to, but my partners and I were very focused on what we're doing. We want to do a very, very good job. We all have families as well. So if I was like, hey guys, I'm going to work out at noon, so we all have to take an hour break, and I'm sure they'd be okay with it. But I also just like to start the day. To be honest, it really puts me in a better mood. My motivation and drive is higher when I work out first thing in the morning, and I feel very sharp. I get on the podcast and I feel very sharp versus, waking up and then just coming to work and getting on the show. When I wrote the Resistance Training Revolution, there were definitely periods where I'd get stuck or I'd get fatigued. I do like a 10-minute stretching or mobility workout, and I'd be reinvigorated. I mean, it was more effective than drinking a cup of coffee for sure.
I love that. What are your holiday plans? Are you going to be in San Jose?
Yeah, we're actually hosting Christmas Eve at my house. And Thanksgiving was at my aunt's. So yeah, we're all staying in San Jose, and we have a lot of family in San Jose, and then we have family up in the Sacramento area. If we all get together, it'll be like 60 of us, but we might split up. So it might be smaller, like 30, 40.
Man, can't imagine what like a holiday party with a bunch of bodybuilders is like. I wish I could be there. Protein shakes on tap.
No, I'm the only one that's really into training that way. Everybody else is, relatively active or whatever, but typical family. In
your family. Yeah. I'm lucky. I have a very small family. I've got like basically no family. It's just me, my 2 brothers, and my dad who just moved to Florida. So.
And you guys are all so close.
We're so close. We're super close.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
But none of us are anywhere near having children at this point, which has us all worried that like the Lugavere bloodline is just going to die with us. I mean, my dad has a little bit of an extended family, but it is kind of a concern.
I bet you it'll all happen at once. I bet you it will. I bet you guys will all, you'll all get in that space all together. It happened to my cousins. I have, there's like a generation of cousins of mine that are all like 8 years younger. And everybody, well, I had a baby too, but that's because I'm an older, dad. I'm 42 and I have a 1-year-old now, but my cousins, like 3 of them just had babies. So it's like, we got these 4 babies now all at the same time. And I think it tends to happen that way. Maybe I'm making that up, but I feel like it happens that way where you just see people have kids.
Maybe for Italians. I don't know. You said what? 40 to 60 people in your family?
Yeah. Aren't you and your brothers around the same age?
Yeah, we're like separated by 3 years apart.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
But we're stunted in many ways. Like me and my brothers, we're just big children, really.
you guys, I haven't met your brothers. I'm sure they're awesome, but you're very genuine and you definitely enjoy whatever you're doing. So I don't think if that's what being a kid means, then we should all be that way for sure.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that conversation, you're going to love this one.
When you have your kids, you're like, you're worried, you're working, and I need to take care of all these things. And then they grow up and you're like, wow, I missed so much. I wish I could do that again. And so then when she had grandkids, she was just more present, more calm. And I kind of feel like that with my baby, because my besides him, my daughter's 11. So I have 11 years. So I'm so much more present, so much more calm than I was with the first two. So it is a different experience.
Wow. You become a lot more aware.
Totally.
Of how fast time flies.
It's so fast. It's crazy, especially with kids because they change so quickly. I mean, 5 months ago, my son was like a total newborn. Now he's like a baby, and that's in a 5-month period. And it just keeps doing that until they're like in their 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
That's insane. What about, how have you been like feeding your newborn? Like, what's that like for you? Because I know you're obviously a nutrition expert, and we're going to talk about that, but yeah, that's got to be new territory for you.
Yeah, so it's entirely breast milk, but we're starting to find foods to introduce. We found a great company. In fact, I talked to you about this company. I like their foods, Serenity Kids. And I like it because it's based on a baby's actual digestion, like how they digest, the enzymes that they have. So like, for example, we often give infants starches as some of their first foods, but they actually break down meats better than starches, or proteins and fats. So like pureed meats or, fats, avocados are probably better for infants. So those are some of the foods that we're starting to introduce. And he loves it. So
super interesting. I became aware of Serenity Kids when my friend Kelly Levesque is a huge fan of theirs. I think she's like an investor in the company too. But I like that I think we're gonna get the founders on the show. They take a more meat centric, healthy fat centric approach than a lot of these juices or whatever, like meal pouches that are often sold to children, which I went to the supermarket recently to just do a little bit of a comparison before, because before I'm going to get the founders on my podcast, I want to make sure that the product is actually good. So even though I don't have kids myself, I did a brief little assessment of like what's out there, the market. And I was noticing that a lot of the meal pouches that are currently available for infants, it's basically like feeding your child Jamba Juice.
Yeah. It's a lot of sugar. It's a lot of fruit, which some fruit's okay, but it just doesn't seem very balanced. And, what's the fastest thing that's growing on an infant? It's their brain. It's like incredible growth. You need a lot of fat to do that. And then, of course, proteins for the body. And carbohydrates aren't essential. It's okay to have some, but they don't really even create the enzymes at that age to break those down. So it's actually healthier. I mean, if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, we probably chewed up meat and then spit it into our babies' mouths. And that's how we fed them. By the way, that's why they think, you ever see a really cute baby and you grit your teeth, you get that, so cute, right? Yeah. They think that that's where it comes from, is that we chewed food and would give it to the baby, kind of creating baby food for them.
No way.
Yeah, I actually looked that up because I have that. That's like a really strong instinct. When I see a cute baby, I like grit my teeth and I just want to squeeze the heck out of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I do that when I see my cat, but that's probably not the same.
I mean, the roots are the same, I'm sure.
The roots, yeah, maybe
it's your baby.
Yeah, she is my baby. But what I appreciate about Serenity Kids is that it's a meat centric, and all the meat that they incorporate, it's all like grass fed.
Yeah.
And it's a bone broth base. It's much higher in protein and healthy fats than anything that I've seen.
Yep.
No commercial. Like no affiliation with the company, but I just it's the kind of food that I would probably feed my kid.
Yeah. So we just started introducing him to some of the stuff, and so far so good. He seems to love it. So it's a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you're down here in LA to talk to me about your new book. Dude, I'm so excited for this book, The Resistance Training Revolution, the no cardio way to burn fat and age-proof your body in only 60 minutes a week. And I've endorsed the back of the book.
You did.
Thank you so much for asking me to do that, by the way.
Well, thank you for doing that. You got to be kidding me.
Well, I mean, you're one of my favorite people in the space, if not my favorite person in the space. I mean, of course, shout out to Adam, Justin, love those guys too. But I just, you're so reasonable, I think, in your recommendations, and what you bring under the hood is
you've got years of experience as a personal trainer. Obviously, you're a brilliant guy. You're super smart, but you don't lose sight of the big picture. And that is that we all want to age better, live longer, increase our health spans. And those are all baked into the recommendations that you make.
Yes. There's a huge advantage that you get from working with everyday regular people for 2 decades. So I didn't train lots of hardcore athletes. I had some. I didn't train super extreme fitness fanatics. I had some clients like that too. Most of my clients were everyday, regular, average people looking to improve their health, their fitness, lose some weight, improve their longevity and mobility. And I did that for a very, very long time. And it was a deep passion of mine. And so what you learn through that process, and this is really an advantage that you get from doing this especially when you compare yourself to researchers or people who look at studies, is that you learn how to communicate what's important in the right way. So to give you an example, if somebody said, hey, what's the best form of cardio to burn calories for me? A researcher will look to the form of cardio that burns the most calories and they'll say, oh, you should run. Now, a trainer like myself who's worked with people for so long, I'm going to ask them another question and say, well, which one do you like the most? And that's based off of experience. I know it doesn't matter what form of exercise I recommend to you. The one that you like is the one that you're going to be most consistent at. And that goes for all the advice that we talk about and that we give people is that, is this really going to work? Can I communicate it in a way that's going to be effective? And does this fit the context of this person's life and their goals? Like, is the advice I'm going to give them really going to work forever? Not just in the short term, because we have a big problem in the fitness space, in the health space, in which, we don't have a weight loss problem. People lose weight all the time. The problem we have is keeping it off. The problem we have is that maintenance. And it's not because people lack discipline. It's not because people are lazy, but rather because the way that we've been selling fitness, the way we've been communicating it is just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for people. Unless you're a fitness fanatic, in which case you probably become, a personal trainer like me. So that's a lot of what I talk about in this book. To give you another example, the fitness paradigm that the fitness industry has been promoting for so long is the wrong paradigm. It's so wrong, and it's done so much damage. It hasn't done anything to solve the problems that the fitness industry actually has the solutions to solve. If you look at the chronic health issues that we, can suffer from, obesity, and then of course all the diseases and chronic illnesses that come from obesity, diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, bone weakening, so osteoporosis. These are all chronic things that are exploding and that actually threaten to bankrupt our societies. If any industry at all has the answers to solve that, it's the fitness and health industry. The problem is we've been promoting this paradigm that's totally false. And the paradigm is this, is in order to lose weight, which would improve your health because obesity is one of the big problems. In order to do that, you just need to burn more calories than you take in, or to put it differently, take in less calories than you burn. Now from that, and that's true. There's truth there, right? That has to happen in order for you to lose body fat. And through that process, you become healthier. There's less inflammation. I mean, in that type of a scenario, sugar, although still not necessarily good for you, it's much better for you when you have that context. And so that's definitely very true. The problem is we've looked at exercise as this calorie burning part of the formula. So, okay, diet, okay, we'll talk about that, but exercise burns calories. So let's just pick the form of exercise that burns the most calories. That makes sense. The problem with that is that it actually doesn't work that way. There's a couple of reasons why. One is that the body adapts to exercise. In fact, that's what you really want to focus on. You don't want to focus on what's happening while you work out. You want to focus on how does this workout or how does this exercise teach my body or tell my body to change and adapt? And then what does that mean, right? So we've been looking at it as how many calories does this form of exercise burn? Pick the one that burns the most. And so for a long time now, for decades now, when talking about obesity or studying exercise as a way to solve some of our problems, we've always picked the calorie burning forms of exercise, which typically are cardiovascular forms of exercise. Now, cardiovascular exercise does burn a lot of calories during the time that you're performing it, but the adaptations that it triggers actually create a situation in which it makes fat loss harder later, longer down the road. And it's hard to maintain. It's very hard to maintain. It's a very manual way of getting what you want. Not to mention, people don't want to exercise every single day. I mean, here's the truth. After having trained, hundreds or thousands of people by proxy, the average person, we can expect realistically, and this is the truth, about 2 days, maybe 3 days a week of exercise. If we're talking long term, if we're talking like my aunt or my mom or my uncle, not like me or you, or you're looking at about 2 or 3 days a week is about as far as we're going to get. It's just we're not going to get people working out 5, 6, 7 days a week. It's not going to happen. So what can we do 2 or 3 days a week to really impact us in the most effective way possible? Well, cardiovascular exercise is a terrible approach with that. Yes, it burns calories, but it doesn't burn as much as you think. An hour of hard cardio might burn 500 calories. Well, you do that twice a week. That's 1,000 calories over a whole week. Not much. Not to mention, obviously it's easy to eat 1,000 calories. I could eat that in 5 minutes. Not to mention the adaptations that cardiovascular exercise causes in the body actually teach my body to burn less calories. It's teaching my body to become efficient with calorie burn because cardiovascular activity doesn't require much strength. So we don't need much strength to do this. We're burning a lot of calories while we're doing it. Let's reduce muscle because that actually makes us more efficient and effective at doing this activity, which is why when you look at like long distance runners, they have very little muscle on their bodies. Their bodies essentially have turned into these very efficient calorie machines, which in the context of modern life, you don't want that. Now, if we were 1,000 years ago and food was very scarce, like I want my body to burn very little calories, but I want my body to burn a lot of calories because food is everywhere, right? So understanding that, like what form of exercise teaches my body to burn more calories? What form of exercise directly through the adaptation process, because the adaptation process continues with exercise. Through the adaptation process, what form of exercise directly combats all these modern health issues that we're all going to be running into? And when you look at it that way, there's one form of exercise that stands head and shoulders above the rest, and that's resistance training.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, resistance training is superior for those things. Number one, it tells your body you need to be strong. You need to have muscle. Muscle is very metabolically active. It burns more calories. So now that rather than me exercising all the time to burn more calories, I could just sit here and burn more calories. I can essentially have a faster metabolism. It also, and this is something that you're very knowledgeable about, muscle is one of the best ways to improve insulin sensitivity. It's one of the best ways. In fact, studies show that having more muscle, regardless of overall body mass, so you could be obese, building muscle improves insulin sensitivity. Strength training or resistance training is the only form of exercise to date that has been shown to potentially stop the progression of dementia and Alzheimer's, probably through that process of increasing insulin sensitivity and getting your body to utilize glucose or glycogen much more effectively, because muscle does store some glycogen. It does utilize some of that glucose. So again, another big problem solved or potentially solved with resistance training. The best part is that it doesn't need to be done all the time. In fact, I know there's people who lift weights 5 days a week and train quite a bit. It takes a long time to even get your body to that point.
Yeah.
2 days a week of traditional resistance training for the average person is plenty to give the kind of results and benefits that we're talking about. It also, there is no such thing as like permanent fitness results from exercise. It just doesn't work that way, right? You have to, whatever you do to get in shape, you have to do to stay in shape. However, again, we're looking at like regular life, right? We can expect that the average person is going to miss workouts, miss a couple weeks because of vacation. Maybe they get sick. Maybe they lose kind of their momentum and they stop working out for a month. Okay. What form of exercise protects you the longest in terms of a period of time that you're not engaging in it? Again, that's resistance training. Have you heard of the term muscle memory?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So this is a very real thing.
Thank God for muscle memory.
That's right. If you've ever had a cast on your arm or your leg and you take that cast off, you know how small the muscle is and then how fast it builds. Like to give you another example, if it took me 10 years to build 10 pounds of lean body mass and then I lost it in a couple months because I was sick or whatever, I could gain that 10 pounds back within a couple months. So it might have taken me a year to gain it the first time. I'll gain it back if I lose it afterwards very, very quickly. And there's a whole complicated explanation as to why. It has to do with satellite cells that really don't go away. But muscle memories are a very real thing. So when you do resistance training and you stop working out, first off, the muscle gains go away much slower than maybe the stamina gains you may get from cardiovascular activity. So it doesn't go away quite as quickly. But if it does, it comes back very fast. So there was a study that was done recently where they took 2 groups of men. One group exercised every single week consistently. The other group exercised 3 weeks on, 1 week off. Okay, so every 3 weeks, they would take an entire week off and they were measuring their performance and their muscle. And as you would predict, every time they take a week off, they would dip a little bit in performance and maybe a little bit in muscle, right? But at the end of this period of this whole study, you know what they found?
What?
Equal muscle and strength gains. So even though they took a week off every 3 weeks, at the end of this 16-week study, they had built just as much strength and muscle as the other group. So it just goes to show you the resilience that resistance training really provides your body. And I can't think of a better time to utilize that, which is right now. So we always have to consider the context of things. You know, anytime a client would try to hire me and ask me questions, I would always have to understand your goals and how many days a week you can realistically work out all the time, and what are we working with, and what do you like? And context is very, very important. And when we understand the context of what's going on right now, it's resistance training. Other stuff I cover in the book really is the stigma and the stereotype that is damaged a lot of people's health because they don't even think to go do resistance training or strength training. You know,
what are some of the misconceptions that you would say, define that stigma? Like what is that about?
Yeah. So, resistance training is gonna make me big and bulky. This is really, especially for women. Oh, if I do resistance training, I get big and bulky. Okay. So that's false. It's actually quite hard to build muscle. Also, muscle's very dense. So if you're watching this right now and, if I could magically snap my fingers and make you lose 5 pounds of fat, but gain 5 pounds of muscle, so your weight is the same on the scale, you would actually be much smaller. You'd have a smaller waist, you'd have smaller legs, you'd be much tighter and more compact. So muscle is very, very dense. Doesn't take up much space. That's number one. And it gives you shape. This is what resistance training does. In fact, years ago when I managed a big box gym, I used to have this trainer that worked for me, and she was 5'1". She loved to lift weights, very fit, very sculpted, very toned. She didn't look crazy or anything like that. And she weighed about 140 pounds. And I would call her into my office anytime I was talking to a potential member. It was a woman who would always, they would always express like, I don't want to do weights because I don't want to get big. I call this trainer in. So I do like on the intercom, attention, staff, so-and-so, please come to Sal's office. She would walk in and then I'd say, can you guess? And I'll give you 10 pounds. Guess how much she weighs. And they would all say, I don't know, 105, 110. Then we'd get her on the scale and they'd see she was 140 pounds. And it would blow their minds. Wow. Because muscle, you don't look huge with a little bit of muscle on your body. You look tight and sculpted. So that's one of the big ones.
But I still think women don't want to see they don't want to see a higher number on the scale.
We got to get rid of the scales.
Yeah.
It's such a, I get how it's a metric, but by itself, it doesn't mean a whole lot. For example, I could cut my leg off and I lost weight. Not the kind of weight that I'd want to lose, right? Body composition is what matters. So we have BMI, for example, which BMI is correlated to, all these health issues. But if we compared that to body fat percentage, we'd see a far more accurate measure, far more accurate. Really, it's about body composition. I mean, my body weight places me at a higher BMI, but my body fat percentage is quite low. So that's what we want to look at. So there's that. And we could talk about the roots of that a little bit later, why that became the way it is. Then you have like resistance training is going to make me stiff. It's going to take away from my flexibility. This is also not true. Proper full range of motion resistance training is the best form of exercise for improving functional flexibility. So what's functional flexibility? So flexibility on its own is just range of motion. So how far can I stretch my arm back? Okay. Functional flexibility is, do I own that range of motion? Do I have strength in that range of motion? So to give you another example, a baby has tremendous flexibility. So like my 5-month-old, I mean, I could take his foot and put it by his head and put him in the splits, no problem. Does that mean that he's stable? Does that mean his joints are safe? Well, no. If I bend his leg over and put a little load on him, he'd probably dislocate one of his joints and injure himself. So functional flexibility is what you want. You want to have the kind of mobility to where I can twist, reach, grab, squat, but I can do so with my own body weight, or even with load if my kid jumps on me or if I go to grab something. Resistance training provides this because when you're training in full ranges of motion, you're doing so with resistance. And of course, you have to do it appropriately. So you want to train within a range of motion that you own, but you can continue to challenge that range of motion and get better and better. And what you do is you start to own it. So now we have studies that actually show that for that kind of flexibility, for mobility and for stability, resistance training is at least as good, but better, usually better than the typical stretching forms of exercise that we would attribute to good flexibility, like yoga, for example. So it's phenomenal for that. Here's another one. For heart health, you should do cardiovascular activity, not resistance training. Okay, this is actually false. We now have studies that show that for heart health, resistance training is actually superior. Cardiovascular activity is good too. And by the way, I want to let everybody know that all forms of exercise, so long as they're done appropriately, have value. So I'm not saying don't do other forms of exercise. They all have value. All I'm saying is if you had to pick one, or you're like the average person, then resistance training is the one that you should make the cornerstone of your routine. It's just going to give you the most bang for your buck. But again, the study showed that when it came to heart health, resistance training was superior. And again, it probably had to do with the fact that your insulin sensitivity is much better, reduces inflammation, and your body is slowly turning into kind of this fat burning machine. In fact, if you look at as a trainer or anybody that's works in, if you're watching this and you've worked in gyms before, you know what I'm talking about. People who make cardiovascular activity, running, cycling, whatever, the cornerstone of the routine when they're looking for weight loss, typically what they'll notice is they'll get this initial fast weight loss, then this hard plateau, right? So, I lost 10 pounds and then nothing. Now my metabolism has adapted, things have slowed down. In order to lose any more body fat now, or weight, I should say, I have to do more or cut my calories even more. And by the way, studies confirm this, the weight that you do lose with that form of exercise is usually half muscle, half body fat. So you're actually not getting leaner, you're just getting smaller.
Yikes.
So in other words, if you lose 10 pounds and half is muscle, half is fat, your body fat percentage has actually stayed the same. I've actually seen people lose weight and their body fat percentage go up.
Wow.
Because they lost more muscle than body fat. Remember, it's a percentage of your body weight. That's what's important, right? So, I may be lean at 210 pounds, but if you took my body fat and put it on a 5-foot person, it'd probably be a lot more because they have so much less body mass.
So they're actually exercising their way to being skinny fat.
Absolutely.
That's insane.
100%. So they'll notice this quick drop and then this hard plateau. Now with resistance training, you notice a slower weight loss, but then it starts to snowball. As the metabolism kicks in, as things start to work, you get this snowball effect. And then you get to this point where you're doing it consistently for 4, 5, 6 months. And you're like, this is weird. I'm eating more than I did before, and I'm just getting leaner. And those are the kind of comments that I would get from clients that come to me and be like, Sal, I'm eating more food. I'm getting leaner. I'm only working with you 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Like, this is really strange. You're like, what's going on here? I'm like, well, your metabolism is really, kicking into gear. So back to the heart health. It does a tremendous job for heart health. We talked about the brain. You want to talk about brain health? Again, now we have studies that show that it's so far, again, there's the only form of exercise that actually has halted what the things that happen that turn into Alzheimer's or dementia. Resistance training, and they think it has to do with the insulin sensitivity and the way the body utilizes, glucose. I know that some researchers refer to Alzheimer's and dementia as type 3 diabetes.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Because of that, right? So there you go. So, and there's so many more. I mean, bone health, this is very obvious. If you're building muscle, you're building bone. There's no form of exercise that'll stop or reverse osteopenia like resistance training. There's just nothing like it. Brain health here's from a different standpoint. Proprioceptive ability. That's knowing where my body is in space, right? Most forms of exercise are very repetitive. So if I run, it's the same motion. If I walk, it's the same motion. If I cycle, resistance training is just, there's an almost infinite number of movements and exercises and ways to position my body. It's not one of those types of workouts that I could just not think about while I'm doing. You're focused, you're there, you're present, you're placing your feet down, you're moving in a particular way with intention and control. And so it really does develop those parts of the brain that have to do with body awareness and balance, better than other forms of exercise. And, part of the challenge has been that the studies on exercise that we've done, now for the last 4 or 5 decades, the vast majority of them, if it had to do with health, it was done with cardiovascular exercise usually.
Right.
It was almost never done with resistance training.
Why is that?
Partially because resistance training really was relegated to weightlifting and athletic performance. So if they did a study on athletic performance or strength, then you would sometimes see resistance training. But if it had to do with health, like, how does exercise improve blood pressure or blood lipid levels, or how does exercise help with cognition? They almost never picked resistance training. So these other forms of exercise got all this amazing publicity through these studies. Resistance training had no studies.
I also think, from a basic science standpoint, it's a lot easier to get an animal to do cardiovascular or quote unquote aerobic exercise than it is to get an animal to lift weights.
That's not a bad point. I didn't even think of that. Absolutely. Now, though, we are seeing a lot of studies on resistance training, and it's starting to really open up. For example, a simple strength test is one of the best single metrics that can predict all-cause mortality.
Yeah, even like grip strength, which is sort of like a surrogate proxy marker for full body vigor.
Yeah,
I don't know how tightly that's correlated, but if you have a weak grip, that's probably a pretty good sign that you're frail.
That's what the studies show. So if you want to predict all-cause mortality, it's obviously best to have multiple tests and parameters. But
data points,
But if you just had one, believe it or not, testing someone's strength is actually one of the most accurate predictors. And they do it either through grip or a simple, can you get up off the floor without having to grab onto something test. Wow. That's it. And they can actually predict all-cause mortality relatively accurately with that versus even testing your blood lipids or your blood pressure. So it's pretty incredible. And if you look at what's happened to us with our modern lives, we're so sedentary, yet we're so busy, right? So it's not like we're not doing anything. Things are so scheduled all the time. And I got to take the kids here, and I got a job, and then I'm going to do this, and then so we're very sedentary, but we're also very busy, and we're just weak. We're very weak. We don't have much strength. We don't have much muscle, and muscle is such an incredible protect. It's like a suit of armor that protects you against chronic disease, against degeneration of the brain or the joints, and we have none of it. And then what do? We tell people, here, you want to exercise? Go do this form of exercise that is going to make you not build any muscle, or maybe even lose a little bit of muscle. So it's no wonder people work out and they're like, this isn't working for me. Why am I not getting good results? I lost some weight for the first month, and now I'm where I'm at, and I'm not eating very much, and it's just not working for me. Here's another good point. Hormones. So recently, we're starting to really, you're starting to see this now in mainstream. We're talking about the kind of the testosterone epidemic that we're seeing in men. So testosterone levels they've been declining for decades now. So I believe the last statistic I saw showed that a 26-year-old male, I think it's 26-year-old male today, on average, has the testosterone levels of a 60-year-old male in the 80s, just to give you an example of what's happening. No form of exercise reliably raises testosterone like resistance training. In fact, resistance training not only raises low testosterone, but it raises high testosterone. So no matter where your testosterone levels are, you're going to get higher levels typically if you train with resistance properly. It also increases androgen receptor density.
Wow.
So androgen receptors are the receptors that testosterone will attach to. In fact, they did a study where they were trying to see how strongly correlated testosterone levels were to strength and muscle gains. So they took men and they had them work out and they tested their testosterone. And they found that natural, so long as it was within a healthy parameter, a healthy range, that the testosterone levels actually didn't make a big difference. It was the androgen receptor density that made the big difference. So the men with the higher density of androgen receptors just built more muscle and had faster results than the people with the, with fewer androgen receptor density, or with less, I should say. Resistance training increases androgen receptor density quite reliably. In women, it balances out estrogen and progesterone. Again, quite reliably. And it's probably because resistance training of all forms of exercise, it's a pro-tissue form of exercise. Other forms of exercise, not so much. In fact, other forms of exercise, directly speaking, are probably more of a anti-tissue forms of exercise.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by pro-tissue and anti-tissue?
So again, if we look at exercise as a stimulus, how's this stimulus? Because remember, when you're doing any form of exercise and it's challenging, it's a stress on the body, and that makes your body want to adapt in order to avoid future stress from the same type of insult, right? So if I'm running and my lungs are burning, it's really challenging. My body's like, this is a stress. Let's improve our stamina so that next time this is no longer a stress. And then, of course, what do? You run longer or run harder and kind of continue that process. Same thing with resistance training or any other form of exercise. So when you exercise with resistance, the stress on the body says, we need more strength. The direct result of that is building muscle. So it's pro-tissue, right? Other forms of exercise, like running, for example, as I'm running, burning lots of calories, also telling my body, we need to become more efficient with calories. So it's reducing tissue. It's taking away. And now think about the hormones that are associated with building muscle and then the hormones that are associated with taking it away, right? So you have like cortisol and stress hormones versus like testosterone or a balance and growth hormone or a balance of estrogen and progesterone. So like when I would get clients that were women who had hormone issues, and I would always work with a functional medicine practitioner, resistance training was just superior. I'd have them come in, and oftentimes these women were not getting enough sleep or lots of stress, maybe under eating fats. That was quite common. So we'd kind of fix some of that stuff. And then I would train them, and the routine would be this very traditional, straight set, compound lift type resistance training routine. So they come see me, and I would get them to get good at squats and deadlifts and presses and rows. And they'd work with me, a couple days a week, and we would rest, 2 minutes in between sets, because the goal again is to send the right signal, not necessarily burn a ton of calories during the workout. And they would get tremendous results. And I would compare that to women who would work with a functional medicine practitioner and then go do like HIIT classes or Zumba or spin classes. And at some point, their functional medicine doctors would say, stop. That is not helping. It's actually making this much more challenging. So it's really bad. It's terrible that, again, because here's my goal with the book, right? And the way I communicate this in the book is it's very easy to understand. And my goal with it is to get to the point where, the average person is, I don't know, they go to the doctor and the doctor looks at their cholesterol or whatever and says, you should probably exercise. And then they think to themselves, I think I'll go lift some weights. Yeah. That's the goal.
As opposed to I'll take up jogging.
Yes, absolutely. So that's really the focus of it. And I talk a little bit about the history of resistance training. We get into some nutrition stuff as well. Again, as a trainer, when it comes to nutrition, I focus more on encouraging the behaviors that lead to, better eating versus the mechanisms of nutrition.
So you're not just all about calorie deficits?
No. I mean, this is the problem. When you have the scientists and researchers who are trying to communicate how to solve this problem, they don't know how to communicate it. All they can tell you are the mechanisms. And we've been told, burn more calories, eat less calories forever.
Yeah.
It's totally failing.
Well, it's just not a weight loss strategy. It's not irrelevant, but it's not it doesn't give people the tools to know how to proceed. We were talking earlier before we started rolling. To me, it's the same as telling a person with obesity that a calorie deficit is the way to a healthier weight is the same thing to me, identical to telling somebody who's stuck in poverty that the way to get out of poverty is with a money surplus. It's like, thanks, Sherlock.
Yeah.
You know,
you have a money imbalance.
You have a money imbalance.
You know what your problem is? I just did a study.
Yeah.
You just need to take in more money than you spend. No, that's 100% correct. So I'll give you an example, right? If you could tell somebody, hey, look, in order to lose weight, you just need to eat less calories. Okay, so I want you to cut your calories. Or you could tell someone, hey, I tell you what, don't worry about your calories. Don't worry about anything else. Here's what I want you to do. Every time you eat, make sure you're not on your phone. You're not watching TV. You're not reading a book. Make sure you're sitting down and you're focused on just your meal. And you might be thinking, what the hell does that have to do with weight loss? Non-distracted eating actually results in fewer calories that we tend to consume. When you're distracted, you eat way more.
15% more calories, actually. Yeah.
It's a fact. So what I'm doing is I'm communicating in ways that will help with the behavior. So now this person, why is that different? Well, here's why. When you tell someone to count your calories, eat less, mentally starts to get very challenging. I'm hungry. I want to eat. What's going on? If you tell someone, hey, just sit down and eat, don't worry about your food, just eat whatever, but just sit down and don't go on your phone, don't watch TV. Okay, I can do that. And then they don't feel deprived. They don't feel like they're cutting anything. And then they come to you and they go, I've done this with clients too, where I'll say, I don't want you to watch your calories. I don't want you to, let's not change anything. Just do that. And they'll say, okay, that's kind of weird, but I'll do it. And then after a month or two, we'll see fat loss. And they'll come to me and be like, I didn't know that my phone was making me fatter. I was like, well, it's not necessarily your phone. It's just the behaviors that it encourages. So, but I'm eating like I normally do. And I was like, actually, you think you're eating like you normally do, but what you don't realize is you're eating less calories because you're not distracted. Another example would be just not eating heavily processed food. Just doing that alone, you're going to eat, 500 calories less a day. So those are the ways that I communicate nutrition in the book, is really through behavior, which in my experience is the only long-term successful way I've ever gotten anybody to their goals in a real forever way. It's never been through counting calories and counting macros. It just doesn't work long-term. The only people that works long-term for are fitness fanatics or orthorexics. I never had a normal person, watch their calories and macros, and then I meet up with them 5 years later and it's going great. It's never. It's always, I went off of it, or, I wanted to enjoy my day. I wanted to enjoy my life. And so I kind of stopped doing it. I need to get back onto it. And when I focused on behaviors, I would see them 5 years later, and a good majority would be like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. It's actually quite easy. I feel like I'm not even trying.
So you've seen a lot of instances over the course of your career where people actually rebound. They lose weight in the short term and then they blow back up.
The statistics are, they say 80%. I would say it's probably closer to 95%. So,
wow.
So it fails. It fails almost every single time. It fails because we're trying to manually burn calories, which is a terrible approach. You can't burn that many calories through working out, just through the process of working out. And and if you go with that approach, like I said earlier, your metabolism eventually adapts. Last time I was on your show, I talked about that study with the Hadza tribe. They did another study in the Amazon where they compared children in rural areas to children in less rural areas. And they wanted to see what the calorie burn difference was. And the reason why they took those two groups was because kids in rural areas are just moving way more. They're working way more. Kids in the more modern areas are sitting down on the computers or whatever. And they thought, much like the Hadza study, they thought they would see this huge calorie burn difference. And what they found wasn't that. They found that they burned similar amounts of calories, because our bodies have to adapt that way. There's no way we would have survived in evolution if we burned 6,000 calories a day because I had to chase down my food or I had to go forage or whatever. There's no way. My body slowly adapts. So knowing this, again, what form of exercise can I hack? What form of exercise can I use to tell my body to do the opposite because I want, that faster metabolism? So So we're trying to burn calories rather than teach our body to burn more calories. When it comes to diet, we're worried about calories and grams of proteins and fats and carbs, and that approach is not going to work. Look at your behaviors. How can we incorporate things into our life that encourages behaviors that makes me naturally eat better? See, here's the problem. If I'm constantly focused on trying to eat healthy, I'm going to fail. Eventually, my willpower is going to be gone. Motivation is it's a state of mind. And like all states of mind, it comes and it goes. I've never had to talk a client who's motivated into eating right and exercising. It just happens. The trouble is when that motivation goes away, like it always does, right? So what are things I can do in my life that will just make it natural for me? So I'll give you one more example. We all have, I don't know, for lack of a better term, trigger foods, right? Foods that we just tend to overeat. I know for me, it's potato chips. If there's potato chips in the house, I'm going to eat them, right? For my wife, it's chocolate. So I would tell this to clients. I'd say, look, here's the deal. You can eat those things. I know you love your potato chips. You can eat them. They just can't be in the house. So I said, well, what do you mean? I'd say, well, if you really want them, tell yourself they're not in the house, but if you really want them, you'll drive to the store and buy yourself a single serving of those chips. But then you can eat them. So don't worry about it. And they'd say, really? Yeah, that's it. Just do that. And now what am I doing when I tell them to do that? All I'm doing is I'm creating a barrier between them and their impulse. That's it. These foods that we tend to overeat, these trigger foods, they tend to be impulsive behaviors. We tend to eat them mindlessly. In fact, do you have a trigger food?
Oh my God, I've got a few. I mean, chocolate is definitely one of them. I like they have these like paleo puff kind of food, like snacks that are they're like Cheetos almost, but I
know what those are.
Yeah, they have like healthier ingredients.
They're like cassava
they're
flour.
Not healthy. Yeah. A lot of those, like those cassava flour based chips, that have somewhat better for you ingredients. But for me, if I'm opening up a whole huge bag that has 14 or whatever servings in it, to me that's a serving. Yeah. That's my serving.
So next time you're eating that, if you can find the state of mind to pause, what you'll find is when you're eating these types of foods, it's not even about the bite that's in your mouth. It's about the one you're holding in your hand. It's the next one, right? So it's not even like, even though I'm chewing and tasting the food, I'm trying to get this one in. And then when that one's in there, it's about the next one. So it's this very impulsive type of behavior. In extreme cases, when people binge, it's how fast can I get this in my mouth? And it's not even about the food that I'm tasting. It's really about this kind of impulsive behavior. So by creating barriers between you and that behavior, it gives you a space to become aware of what's going on. You don't even have to try, by the way, to become aware. If you just create a barrier, that oftentimes a person will, oh, I want chips. Oh, okay, I can drive to the store, and maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll drive to the store. Maybe the next time they'll say, do I really want to drive to the store? Or on the way to the store, like, God, I'm driving to the store to get potato. Do I really want? I know why. I'm stressed. That's why I'm doing this. And so it starts to encourage better behaviors. Much better approach to nutrition is what foods encourage behaviors that make me overeat? What are some barriers I can put between myself and these impulsive, types of things that I'm doing? What kinds of foods tend to be more satiating? Food order. This is a good one. We know that protein is very satiating, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't we eat that first in our meal? What if we told people, hey, I know you're going to have this big meal, eat a big serving of protein first. And then I used to do this with clients too. I would say, I wouldn't tell them to take anything away. I'd say, okay, here's what I want you to do, Mrs. Johnson. You weigh 130 pounds. I want you to eat 100 grams of protein a day. I don't care about anything else. Hit your protein requirements, and let's not worry about, you can eat everything else like you normally would or whatever. Just make sure you hit 100 grams every single day. Now, I knew that if she did that, she would eat less. And sure enough, every single time. And it's funny because they'd come to me and they'd say, I don't know, eating all this protein made me burn fat. Well, not necessarily. It's just it makes you eat less. Yeah. Because you're prioritizing a macronutrient that just makes you full. And so this is kind of the approach that you'll find long-term success.
Here's a tip that I do. So there's nothing like intrinsically wrong with ice cream, right? And ice cream is like one of the most pleasurable foods that exist, right? So you wouldn't want to deprive somebody of ice cream for the entirety of their life, right? Ice cream is just like one of the things that humans have come up with that just like it's like sex, right?
Yes.
Although we didn't come up with sex, we inherited that. But so here's a trick that I use. It's obviously very easy to eat more than a serving of ice cream if you have a pint of ice cream sitting in front of you, right? But what if you were to buy an ice cream pop, like a popsicle, like an ice cream? I don't know, are they popsicles?
Yeah,
like
sure.
Yeah. Portion control is built into that, right? So it's a lot easier, I think, to portion control when you're eating an ice cream pop, because then you have to make that mental, if you want to consume more than that single portion, you've got to actually like convince yourself to go and get another ice pop, and then you're going to feel like a bit of a glutton, right?
Yeah.
If you go for the second ice pop. But by eating that, you're portion controlled. Whereas if you have just a pint of ice cream sitting in front of you, or even if you take it out of the freezer and you're scooping it into the your dessert bowl, we're always going to be more inclined to put more than a serving in it. So go instead of buying pints of ice cream, buy the ice cream popsicles, because portion control is built in. So whenever you're using, eating a snack or whatever, like even Paleo Puffs, which is like a food for me, where if that's a trigger food, if I open up the bag of Paleo Puffs, I'm going to eat the whole bag. Mm-hmm. Now they have smaller bags of it. So I would be more inclined to buy that, where I know I'm not going to eat 2 bags. I'm not going to eat 2 bags of the smaller. I'll just eat 1 because it's already portion controlled out for me. And there's that friction.
There's that barrier. You create that barrier. So you might, and I've done that. I've actually told clients to do that, where I'll say, okay, buy single servings. You go ahead and buy a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But when you go take it to the couch, or when you go take it to go sit down, take 1.
Yeah.
If you want more, you got to walk back and get another one. And it's not that it works every single time, because there's going to be those situations where you do go back and get 1 or 2 or 3 more. But there will be enough times to where you pause and go, do I really want another one? I think I'm okay. And that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Also, our approach towards nutrition and exercise, we have to start from a positive place rather than a negative place. You would be surprised at how much more effective it is when somebody says, I'm eating right and I'm exercising because I want to take care of myself, versus I'm eating right and I'm exercising because I hate the way I look, or I'm too fat, right? It's very, very different. One of them feels good. One of them feels bad. It's no wonder that people stop their diet or their routine and say things like, I just want to enjoy my life. I've had people tell me that before. Like, why did you stop exercising? Oh, I just want to enjoy my life. And we know the reality is you'll enjoy your life more because you're fit and healthy. You have a better quality of life. But they went at it from this kind of negative, insecure place. And I will partially blame the fitness space for that. It's a very powerful way to sell products. It's so much easier when you learn marketing. And I own a media company, a fitness media company, and we'll hear marketing teams that we work with say this all the time. What are the pain points, right? Make sure you have a pain point, because that's what gets people to buy your product or whatever. And it's true. It gets people to buy because we want to run away from pain, but it's a very ineffective way of staying the course and staying consistent. Nobody wants to hate themselves forever. Or look, if you hate your body, what is exercise? Punishment. Exercise is punishment. If you hate your body, what is eating right? It is restricting me. It's taking things away. If I'm doing these things because I want to take care of myself, what is exercise? Exercise is a form of care. What is nutrition? What is proper nutrition? A form of care. Who doesn't want to take care of themselves, right? So it's a very, very different approach, and the results are so much better, especially in the long term. In fact, in the long term, you find that people enjoy it more and more. You start to hear people, like I would hear clients say, yeah, I really need to go to the gym. I need to, I really enjoy it there. It's like, wow, I'm hearing these people say that they enjoy it, that they want to do this, versus, oh, I got to go to the gym and beat myself up or whatever.
Yeah. Dude, I love going to the gym. I love having a good workout, and I focus primarily on resistance training. And it's been for, 20 years at this point. It's been like a home for me. I go to the gym, and sometimes I'll put my headphones in, sometimes I go without, but I love it so much. The benefits that I get to my mental health, what I see in the mirror, just the feeling good, looking in the mirror, shirtless after you get a pump in the gym, it just makes you feel good.
It does.
Because you see the change like that.
You do. You do.
Just see it.
You see the change. And I really want, in the 70s, there was a book that was published called I think it's called The Complete Book of Running. If I show you the cover, you'll recognize it's like a leg in like a red running shoe. And it was like everybody owned it. And it ushered in the running revolution. Before that, if you went outside, you didn't see anybody running. It was like you go out in the 60s and early 70s or before, you wouldn't see people jogging. It just never happened.
Wow.
All of a sudden, it became this huge craze and everybody started lacing up their shoes and going out on a run. I want that to happen with resistance training. I want the average person to really understand this is not a workout just for bodybuilders or weightlifters. This is the kind of workout, if you just want to get fit, if you just want to burn body fat, if you just want to be lean, if you just want to improve your cognitive performance or your health, and you only have a couple days a week, and realistically, probably not going to work out more than a couple days a week, that's the form of exercise you should probably pick. That's the one that's going to do the best. And it doesn't matter if you're old, young, male, or female. That's the form of exercise it's going to give you way more bang for your buck, especially the longer you do it, especially the more consistent you are with it over time. You just get those accelerating results.
I completely agree with you. I think it's almost like a panacea, resistance training. It's so great for you. I mean, we're talking about all the signaling, all the hormonal changes, everything that it does for your brain. I did an episode of the podcast recently where we were talking about myokines, these chemicals that are produced in your muscles, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, that go up to your brain and support neuroplasticity, the birth of new brain cells, the hormonal signaling, testosterone, what that does for your well-being. One really interesting line of research that I'm kind of enamored with because I think it's so empowering. They've done these studies, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, where they'll take a person and they'll make them work out one leg.
Yep.
And they'll see that there's improvements in strength in the other leg.
Correct. Yeah. So if you break your arm and let's say you work out regularly and you break your arm and you think, I don't want to work out my other arm because there's going to be such a difference. The reality is training the other side will actually prevent a certain amount of muscle loss and strength loss in the arm that is being casted up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you get this localized effect from exercise or from resistance training. You also get this systemic effect throughout the whole body. One more thing I want to touch on, because I'm sure at this point people are watching and saying, okay, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go maybe lift some weights or whatever, which would be great. But one more thing I want to say is, and I think this is true for all forms of exercise, but we're talking about resistance training. So you are much better off treating your workouts like practice than you are treating them like workouts. So I'll give you some examples of what I mean. So years ago, and this the way I'm communicating this came to me years ago. I was on a hike, and there were runners up in the hills, and I got passed up by a couple runners. And as a trainer, it's impossible for me not to notice someone's biomechanics. It's just natural, right? So I'm seeing people run by me, and I'm like, oh my God, this feet are pronating so bad. Or, oh my gosh, I could see like an anterior pelvic tilt that's going to hurt their back. And I'm noticing people run by. And then there was someone that ran by that looked like they were just gliding, right? And then it dawned on me.
Was it Aaron Alexander?
No, it wasn't. although I've seen that guy move, and he does move like that. And it dawned on me, the reason why people do that is because we treat exercise, when it comes to exercise, it's all about the workout portion. So why are you running, or why are you squatting, or why are you bench pressing, or whatever? It's to get sweaty and to get sore. Really, it's the way we need to look at it is it's a skill, and I need to perfect and practice the skill. First off, if I treat it like that, I'm going to train more appropriately. My intensity is going to be more appropriate, but I'm also going to continue to get better at that skill. And over time, I'm not going to get injuries. I'm going to feel good. So if somebody, for example, said, I want to start running, I haven't run since I was 10 years old, I'm going to go practice running. Well, what they would do is they would start slow. They wouldn't run to fatigue, because the first thing that happens when you get tired is your form goes out the window.
Yeah.
And they would slowly, over time, perfect the skill of running. That's how I tell people to do resistance training in my book. I say, look, you go to the gym or work it at home. I actually provide workouts at home without equipment, workouts with bands, and then workouts with dumbbells and barbells. I say, look, when you do these workouts, rather than thinking I'm going to make my legs sore, or I'm going to really burn my shoulders out, whatever, practice these movements. Go in and think, practice, get really perfect with this. The results you get from that are just superior. In the short term, you get great results. In the long term, for sure, though, because your form gets better. You don't hurt yourself. You're always mindful of the technique of the exercise rather than how much it hurts. And, there's one myth that I'd like to talk about here with exercise, which is that getting sore is like this great metric of a successful workout. It's actually a terrible metric. You actually probably should not get sore from your workouts, or if you do, it should be very, very minor. Excessive soreness means you did too much. It just did. So Your goal is when you work out, you'll maybe feel it a little bit or not at all. And that's how you know you're doing okay. If you get really sore, like, oh my God, I worked out yesterday, my legs, and I can't walk for 2 days, you went too hard. And doing it in that way will just get your body to prioritize healing over adaptation. So you're not building strength or muscle or whatever, or improving your performance. Your body's it's just prioritizing, I need to heal. I need to just, heal this tissue. And so you end up doing this thing where you get sore, heal, get sore, heal, get sore, heal, and you never improve. I never get stronger. I never see my body change. I'm just damaging and healing my body. So treat your workouts like practice, and you'll do much better.
That's amazing. And you don't even have to use super heavy weights, right?
No. Your body actually has no idea how much weight you're lifting. It just knows tension. So I could allow your form to dictate the weight that you use. And then if you want to increase the tension, I would say focus on your form. Slow down your tempo. Focus on the muscles that you're trying to feel. That's going to give you, it would be like adding weight minus the increased risk of, adding weight, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you get stronger and your technique is good and your tempo is good and you add weight, that's also good.
Yeah. We used to think that there was a relatively narrow effective rep range for muscle hypertrophy, for strength gain, but now we know it's a lot more sort of forgiving and broader than that. Right?
I talk about that in the book, right?
Yeah.
So all rep ranges within reason. So 1 rep to, let's say, 30 or 40 reps, right? They all build strength and build muscle. So you might think, well, why stay in 1 rep range or another? What's the difference? Well, besides the specific adaptations, like if you're a power lifter, you're probably going to spend more time in the 1 to 5 rep range because your goal is to compete and lift as much weight as possible for 1 rep.
Yeah.
Or, maybe you want more strength, stamina. So you're going to do higher reps. Besides that, really what you should do if you're just looking for overall fitness and health is to train in all rep ranges. And the best way to do that is to phase your workouts. So you would do something like 3 or 4 weeks in the 6 to 8 rep range. And then I'm going to move now in the next 3 to 4 weeks to the 15 to 20 rep range. And this just gets the body to, it's a novel stimulus, and it gets the body to progress in a more consistent, perpetual way. You stay in the same rep range all the time, the stimulus becomes less and less effective, and you don't get as consistent of results versus moving in and out of different rep ranges. And it's usually about 3 or 4 weeks is why I recommend people to do that.
It's amazing, dude. Well, as I've said, and we'll say again, you are my go-to fitness expert. So I implore everybody listening to this to pick up your new book, The Resistance Training Revolution. Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
I oscillate carbohydrates based upon the season and the exercise that I do, but I usually eat 2 meals a day. Start out, and again, I work from home, so that makes it a lot easier and stuff like that. Usually break the fast, so to speak, around 10:30, something along those lines. And then we try to have dinner as a family by 6. Now, of course, if we're going out to dinner, we have friends over, whatever, like I have that buffer room in there, but it's generally low carb. I love almonds, ferments, olives. We have a lot of coconut. We have ghee butter as fat sources. And then I like red meat. I have backyard chickens. I'm not a huge fan of chicken meat, but I love the eggs. We have a ton of eggs. We can talk about chicken meat if you want later, but yeah, so a lot of eggs, a lot of red meat. We have fish and organs, liver, and try to vary the organs based upon availability and where they're from and all of that.